Yo, what's up? It's me, that one air conditioner noises. But anyway, we are back with part 5 for What If Subaru was Sukuna's vessel. If you guys are new to my channel and have no idea why I said that, it's because of my great background. But it's also because I'm that one weeb, so if you are new, make sure to go up here to the top upper right hand corner and you will find a playlist which has all the previous parts so you can catch up and get updated on the story up to the minute to this newest part of the series. Anyway, you guys already know what to do. If you like what I got going on, make sure to slap that like button with our Sengun. Make sure to comment down below what you think and all that good juicy shit for the channel. Anyway, I probably just lost monetization since that was maybe in the first 30 seconds, but it's fine. We're going to leave that in. Anyway, that was a good intro, so you can tell I've made videos in a while. Also, just to clarify something, this is the 5th take I've done. I don't care. Okay, this is going in. This is going in. I'm done. I'm done. I'm not doing it again. Anyway, let's just get into this part for What If Subaru was Sukuna's vessel. Anyway, after that start, you guys can already feel the chaotic energy I've got going on. But anyway, let's just get into the story. Starting off with where we left off last time. It has been a while, so I will do a small recap. Subaru and Sukuna had already discovered previously that Return by Death existed, and now we're beginning to try and figure out why Rem died, with our two protagonists now working on their best shot to try and uncover about Rem's death and how they can prevent it. Let's get back into it right now. Subaru leaps out the door as Sukuna would be now sifting through Subaru's memories, trying to find what he had lost, both his memories having been stripped away by the power of Return by Death. Damn, if only I had another finger, I could easily overpower this dumb memory glitch. This would be what Sukuna would be thinking as he stares menacingly into the corner of his domain, which is now inhabited by Sutella. Sutella would pull her finger down her eyelid as she sticks her tongue out, as this would piss Sukuna off as the two start arguing inside Subaru's body, with Subaru pretty much unable to hear this conversation while the two are bickering. Sukuna would call her a dumb bitch as she starts trying to throw hands, with the two now beginning to get a bit more angry. Subaru could feel his cursed energy rising, but he wouldn't know exactly why until he starts screaming at Sukuna to knock it off. Sukuna would tell him to buzz off, brat, as Subaru would tell him he doesn't have to be that mean to him. Subaru would then eventually finally find the door to the Great Library, as she would open it to find Beatrice sitting in her usual spot right in front of the door on her little stool reading a book of some kind, but he couldn't really quite understand what it was, with it having a weird black cover. Subaru would look over as he tries to peek over her shoulder, just seeing blank pages. Interesting reading taste, he'd say, before Beatrice would look up huffing, as she then sweeps her hand, now shooting wind at him. Subaru would raise his arms to block the attack, but he'd get blasted, screaming as he gets shot out of the library just like he had before he even had the chance to ask what he wanted to. Beatrice would say as he gets sent flying out that he seems to be a real rude guest, I suppose, as he gets sent flying out of the Great Library and crashing out the window just like he had before. Damn, I didn't get to ask about that one type of magic. Before Subaru could even land to the ground, he would then remember bushes, as he then lands directly into the tree leaf greenery of the bushes of the Roswell estate, now feeling the pins and needles quite literally piercing into his body. Ow, 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 ow. Subaru would then lunge up as he jumps up, brushing off the now pine needles now falling to the ground. Emilia and Puck would be sitting outside in the morning, as they would see Subaru fall out the window, walking over to see him, as they see him covered in the needles brushing himself off, with Emilia giggling and Puck laughing at him. Subaru would say it's not that funny, is it, as he then tells him to knock it off. Puck would laugh as Subaru says, "Oh, I can't be mad at you. You're so fluffy. Please let me pet your ears." We would then hear Sukuna whispering from inside, "Cat girls." Subaru would then stop as he tries to reach for Puck's head to pat him, before he realizes that this would be the same as consenting that Sukuna was correct. He would resist as he grabs his hand, pulling it back, tears falling down his face as Puck would be confused. Emilia would giggle again as she asked what he's doing, with Subaru now pulling himself up as he says, "Nothing." Subaru would begin to talk to Emilia just like he had in the original run, asking where they were so as to fit into the timeline better. As they're talking, with Emilia explaining that she had taken him here after he had been fallen unconscious after fighting off that one assassin who tried to take her out in the royal capital. By the way, thanks for saving my insignia. Emilia would then explain that this was the actual benefactor of her. Benefactor? Subaru would wonder. He'd brush it off. Anyway, with Subaru and Emilia and Puck beginning to walk back towards the mansion, we would see Rem and Rom come running out, telling Emilia that that guy could be dangerous, saying that he just ran out of bed and started running out through the mansion. Emilia would turn to Subaru, giving him a weird eyebrow raise, as Subaru would shrug his shoulders, saying, "I have no idea what they could be talking about. The two must have seen a ghost or something," with the two looking at each other, now thinking, Sister, I think our guest is crazy," with the two of them already beginning to discuss what they might have to do with this potential spy. Subaru would then be taken to lunch with Roswaal, not making the mistake of calling him a clown, as he would then ask for a job at the mansion as a butler, just like he had in the original time, in order to find out what happens to Rem. Subaru would be taking the job gracefully, as he'd actually be doing really well at tasks, having learned how to be a butler from Rem and Rom in the previous timeline. Sukuna would be commenting on his knife work, saying he could do a better job, as Subaru would tell him to go ahead, as he switches with Sukuna. This version of Subaru and Sukuna is very different from the relationship that Itadori Yuji and Sukuna have, considering their setting and what happened to them. With Sukuna having resided within Subaru for so many years, the two are basically almost the same person. So Sukuna is much friendlier to Subaru in a teasing uncle sort of way, while still having arguments and fighting with him constantly. Well, Sukuna is still a cursed evil spirit, so he's definitely trying to take Subaru over, but at this point he's way too weak for Subaru to even worry. With Sukuna still not having gained a majority of his fingers yet, and Subaru having already inherited most of the techniques from Sukuna from his first finger he had ingested all those years ago. So switching with Sukuna to let him cut some potatoes wasn't the biggest deal Subaru could have ever done. Subaru would cut the potatoes, as Sukuna would be laughing, saying, "Watch this," cutting them and mincing them in a single stroke. Rom, watching from the side suspiciously, would then clap, saying that's a very good technique, before realizing that she said it out loud, taking it back and covering her mouth, saying that she didn't mean it. Sukuna would smirk, saying, "Oh yeah? You want me to show you some other technique?" Before he could finish the sentence, this would be when Subaru would switch back, as he then punches himself in the face, telling him to knock it off. Ron would be staring at Subaru with a look of both disgust and thinking, "Pervert." Sukuna would be laughing his ass off inside Subaru's guts, telling Subaru that he looks like a dumbass falling on the floor from his own punch. Subaru would be blushing, telling Sukuna to stop messing with him, even yelling it out loud. Ron would just be watching now, actually concerned for the psychological health of Subaru. Subaru would then cough as he clears his throat, getting back to his activities as a butler. He would help clean the big bath of the Roswaal mansion with Rem, who would be commenting on his cleanliness skills, as well as helping with dish work and all the other usual skills he would have learned in the original. This would be around the time when Subaru would go down to the village to get groceries with Rem. Subaru would be watching Rem like a hawk, knowing that this must have been the place where Rem gets the effect or dies, considering that for the past week and a half, Rem has been fine, and even in the previous time she'd been fine up until this day. It's some point during today or tomorrow that something bad's going to happen to Rem. Subaru could feel it. Subaru would be watching Rem as he would see her approaching the kids with the little dog. This would actually be the opportune time that Subaru would step in, offering Rem some help with groceries as he begins to take the bag. This would be when the little maw beast would bite Subaru's hand. Now, something unique here is this is actually what happened in the very first run, before Subaru was then killed by Rem, is that his hand was bitten by this little maw beast, which would have a curse, but since he is part of the Curse King Subaru, he's immune to curses and poisons. So Subaru wouldn't actually notice this, but he would walk away with the little girl thinking that she had successfully killed one of Roswaal's workers. Anyway, with Rem and Subaru going back to the mansion, this would be the time when he decides to go to the Great Library and ask if Beatrice knows of any magic that can kill from a time gap. As he goes into the Great Library, she would flick her eyes upward, with her little butterfly eyes meeting Subaru's dark and small, beady ones. Beatrice would huff as she says, "You're the rude one from earlier, huh? Well, at least you're dressed properly now." Subaru would sigh, saying, "What can you do to make it up to her, Bayako?" This would be when Sukuna would start laughing, saying, "Bayako? That's the best nickname you've come up with? Come on, look at her. It's the drill lolly." Subaru would start laughing out loud, as Beatrice would then huff, saying, "What's so funny?" Subaru would stop, saying, Nothing, Bayako. Why are you calling me that anyway?" Subaru would then explain as he then dries his tears, thinking, "Drill lolly." Sukuna would also find it funny, but then Subaru would eventually get to the point. Subaru would talk to Beatrice and ask her if she knew about any type of magic that could kill someone from long distance or over some sort of period of time. She would think about it for a second before saying she did, but why would he ask? She would then explain to her that someone near to him might actually be dying soon, and he thinks that if he can find a way to prevent it, then that'd probably be the best for everyone. You're not planning on assassinating anyone, are you? Even with your powers that I can sense, I don't think you'd even be able to take Roswell down," she'd say. "Roswell? I don't think I'd ever fight him. Well, he's my boss now and all," Subaru would say. Beatrice would humph, thinking that he's just bluffing. But with enough pleading from the annoyance, Beatrice would decide to get up and show him the book about shamans, as well as curses. "Oh, I know all about curses," Subaru would say. Beatrice would look over, saying, "I would figure that since you have one on your hand." She'd point down to the hand of a bite mark. Subaru would say, "Wait, really?" as he looks down, looking at his hand, seeing as he focuses his eyes that it is actually covered with a very faint amount of curse energy. "Wow, it was so weak I didn't even notice it." "Weak?" Beatrice would say. "That's some strong stuff you've got there. You must be really blind or something. I'm surprised you can see it at all, to be honest." This would be when Beatrice would comment, saying, "Actually, Subaru's entire body was covered with the stuff." With Subaru asking, "Really?" That's probably Sukuna's fault, isn't it?" Sukuna would be whistling, trying to distract himself out of the conversation. Anyway, Subaru would eventually use his cursed energy as he would cover his hand with more of it, eventually just melting the cursed energy from the curse of magic that was inflicted upon him to kill him with his own cursed energy and just absorbing it, with now the curse having been completely taken and deactivated. Beatrice would be shocked, seeing that he could actually do that without her help. "You can deactivate curses?" she'd ask. Subaru would look up, saying, "Is that weird?" Beatrice would say nothing as she tells him to leave, with Subaru saying he already got what he came for as he decides to leave and not bother her anymore. Beatrice would be biting her nail, she thinks, if Buffy knows about this, that being Puck, for anyone who doesn't know what she calls Puck from the anime, and probably the manga too, since Beatrice adores Puck in every possible way. Anyway, Subaru would go back to his room, having discovered that someone had put a curse on him, with him looking down at the hand before realizing that there's still that bite mark on it. That dog? But then, he'd realize as his eyes would sharpen. "We have to go now!" Subaru would then run out of his room, running over to Rem and Rom's room, explaining that they need to get down to the village as soon as possible. Something bad's going to happen. The two who were just getting ready to go to bed would be asking him what the hell he's talking about, with Subaru explaining that there's some sort of cursed monster down there, or a maw beast, with the two being skeptical on this, saying that Lady Emilia puts warden crystals all around the village in order to protect the village from such maw beasts. "We need to check if any of them are faulty," Subaru would say. "I'll go with you," Rom would say, saying, "It's probably just a hoax. And if Subaru does try anything, she can easily take him out." Subaru would be a bit offended with him having remembered how he actually killed Rom in the previous timeline, but he'd say nothing as he looks down. "Yeah, you're probably right," he'd say as he then takes his hand behind his head, crossing his fingers behind its back, as he didn't really want to lie to her. Anyway, Subaru would eventually now head out with the two demon-made twins as they head down to the village trying to find any faulty crystals. This would be when on their way down they would see hordes of maw beasts. Maybe Subaru's right, they'd be thinking. "Barusu, I'm gonna head into the forest. You and Rem stick together and keep heading down." "Wait, sister, it's too dangerous without..." Rem would turn around as Ron would meet her eyes, with now Rem feeling the guilt and the memories of what she had done to her sister, as she remembers their past, remembering what happened to their village and how her sister had her horn taken away from her, and how Rem had been useless. Rem would look down saying, "Oh, okay," as Rem would follow Subaru. Subaru would be looking around as he'd eventually find it, one of the mana crystals would actually have been taken down and was broken. I knew it. Then there's someone in the village who... Suddenly we heard screams, as parents would be looking around everywhere, doors flying open, with many of the children in the village having gone missing. What happened? They're gone! All the parents would be screaming, as Subaru would run up asking what happened. Rem would be close behind on his tail, as the parents would begin to explain that suddenly their kids had been out playing earlier, but they were just gone. Subaru would quickly look around, narrowing his eyes as he covers them with cursed energy, being able to notice some small trail of cursed energy left in the area. Damn, that shaman must have taken them. Subaru would look up as he tells the villagers, saying he'll go take them back for them, as he begins to head out. Before he does so though, one of the villagers would then throw a sword towards him. Subaru would turn around, catching the blade, as he would look at it, unsheathing the metal. You might need that, the blacksmith would say, as Subaru would nod, thanking him. Subaru would then put the sword at his side, thinking he might try adding cursed energy to it, maybe that'll do something, as he begins heading towards the trail from the cursed energy fade left behind. Rem would follow him, saying that she can smell a strong scent of the witch, but of course it might be him. Huh? What do you... Rem would begin to explain, saying that he stinks, smells like that damn witch and their cult. What? What are you talking about? Before Subaru can say anything further though, we would see Ram come crushing through a tree, as a horde of dog mob beasts would be swarming at her, with her using her bald chain, attacking them with her mace. Ram! Subaru would then pull out his sword as he covers it with his cursed energy, it turning to a red and black blade. Get away from her! Subaru would yell as he shouts, jumping forward and slashing through the dogs, ripping off their heads one by one, slashing and cutting, using the black flash on the tip of the blade as it makes it extra powerful, blood splattering everywhere. Ram and Rem would be actually pretty impressed seeing his power as he begins cutting them down faster and faster. I can't keep this up for long, Subaru would be thinking. My cursed energy will run out sooner or later, and this guy's probably not going to help me. Nope, out of luck. I'm busy reading manga, Sukuna would say. Damn you. Subaru would get back to work as he tells Ram and Rem to help him, with the two using magic as they're fending off the beasts. Subaru would continue to lead the trail as the sisters would also begin to smell the strong scent, this being of mob beasts, as they'd eventually find that same clearing where the kids would be laying down, with multiple mob beasts now surrounding them, as we then see a little girl with purple hair. Of course, this being the shaman or the assassin that we know as Emilia. Emilia would turn, her eyes flicking up a cruelty in them that Subaru hadn't seen in the other day. Who are you? Subaru would ask, holding his blade and pointing towards her. You'd point your blade at a child, she'd ask, laughing and giggling. Alright, fine then. I won't show you any mercy either. Not like I planned to. Kill them all, she'd say, tonelessly, with a melancholic feel, as the mob beast would listen to her call. He would then see the puppy in her arms as he would jump down, eventually proving to have the highest cursed energy among them, as she would see that that was the thing that had cursed Rem in the previous time. I have to protect them, Subaru would say, as Subaru would then drop the sword, switching to his fists, which was his better asset anyway. No, Barasu, you can't touch those things. If they bite you and get their curses inside your body, you're guaranteed to be dead. Subaru would turn, saying, I'm the king of curses, with Rem being shocked and Ram being shocked, just as several hundred dogs start jumping at him. Time to show them who's boss. Subaru still thinking he's the main character due to Sukuna's power having buffed up his ego. Subaru turns, he throws a fist covered in cursed energy and slams the first round of dogs into the ground, crushing their skulls. Subaru would be not lasting his victory for long though, as this is ReZero, not a shonen manga, and Subaru quickly is going to get overwhelmed, with multiple beasts now ripping and tearing at him, with him now screaming, I need a little help, as he could feel his limbs now getting bitten at. The curses of these mob beasts were so weak, however, that they couldn't even damage Sukuna's form, so he wasn't actually taking any of the curses. Rem and Ram were watching and said, who's that king of curses again? Subaru would say, help me, as he starts screaming, realizing that they're just gonna let him get ripped apart. With him now pulling as his clothes gets ripped, now freeing himself as he throws another punch and a kick, covering cursed energy, sending them flying back. I could really use one of those poison techniques right now, Sukuna, Subaru would say. No can do. Manga, Su-chan, manga. Subaru would say. You and your shoujo manga. Whatever. Come on, let's do this, Subaru would say. Ram and Rem would jump in, with Rem using ice magic and now Ram using wind magic, as wind and ice would continue to shatter together. Now Rem actually accessing her demon form to slay hundreds of them, as her, Ram, and Subaru would actually be fighting them off. Subaru would have picked up the sword by this point since he was running low on cursed energy and was just having to use physical buffs, now ripping at them and cutting them up and killing a lot of them, with Subaru now eventually making to the final Maw Beast, the big boss. Rem was in a demon-enhanced state, and the blood had only gotten to her head. Ram, can you take your sister down? Subaru would say as he turned, seeing the demon now in her crazed bloodlust. Ram would turn to Subaru, shaking her head, saying she'll deal with the Maw Beast if he can deal with her sister. All he has to do is touch her on the horn with that sword, but don't cut it off. Huh? Subaru would say. Rem would laugh, saying, you can surely take on one girl, can't you? King of curses. Subaru would tell her to screw off, as Rem would then lunge at Subaru, saying she demands the blood of the witch, which Subaru was very conveniently covered head to toe with, as she could smell him from like a mile away. She would turn around and throw her spiked mace, trying to attack him as he dodges out of the way. Low on energy and Sukuna not willing to help, he decides to have to use one of the techniques that Sukuna had imparted onto him unwillingly. Fine, how about this? Subaru would scream out to Ram, saying after he uses this, he'll be wiped out. This is the only way. She has to finish off the rest of the opponents. Can you do it? He'd say as he dodges and weaves, jumping off of trees as he's evading Rem's attacks. Ram would look up as she asked what he's going to do, and Subaru would tell her to have faith in him. Ram would then nod as he says that she can do it, as she continues fighting off the main Maw Beast, and Miley would be watching now, slowly moving away from the fight as she decides that she's going to run. Subaru would then use his technique, saying, it's all up to her now, as he then clasps his hands together into a very familiar hand seal. Malevolent Shrine! Sukuna would look up interested, saying, oh? Recently, after Subaru had absorbed the second finger, which Sukuna had devoured around the first or second episode of the series, Subaru had actually unlocked one of Sukuna's most powerful techniques, that being his domain expansion. But it comes at a cost. Being able to use this technique would wipe Subaru completely out of energy, since using a domain expansion is an extremely high-level curse technique, and Subaru is barely able to even pull off a level 1 domain. As he is able to though, Rem would be trapped, seeing just one small totem, that being the first built of Subaru's Malevolent Shrine. He could already feel his stamina being drained as he feels himself about to pass out, but Rem couldn't move. It should be locked in place, frozen from the domain and the cursed energy. Sukuna would be actually a bit impressed with him having not even instructed Subaru how to do this. This purely being from the memories and from the abilities that Subaru had gained from those years he'd spent with Sukuna. As Subaru would run forward, he would then, with just the last bit of power, throw a small punch, barely grazing her horn with enough force to knock her out of the demon form. Immediately, Subaru would fall out of the domain expansion as he falls to the ground limp like a rag doll, completely unconscious. Left to the mercy of the two demon maids, what would happen? Subaru would have no idea, as his consciousness fades off into black. If you guys want to see the next part for What If Subaru was Sukuna's vessel, make sure to hit that like button, comment down below what you thought. And I really do hope you enjoy this part. It took a while, and I really want to make sure this series really shines, so I add a lot of comedy and humor into it that I don't really do with most What Ifs, just considering how I do this. And this What If was started around the same time I was doing a very dark What If called What If Naruto had anti-chakra, so if you guys want to watch that, that series is also one of my best written ones in my opinion, so definitely go check it out. Anyway, I will see you guys in my next video. I'll see you weebs next time. Goodbye.